מי? דניאל, איך הוא לא? חמב"ש? הוא ממש בכלא או שהוא צריך להיות בכלא?
בכלא.
מה? הוא היה שכן שלי, שבגללו היה לי ילדים קטנים אז, אני מדבר על סיפור שלי. הם היו 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
8, 9, 10, 11.
אז הם היו עכשיו בני 20. לפחות 15 שנה. והוא היה שכן שלי. אבל חשבתי שהילדים שלי יגדלו עם שכנים כאלה. אנחנו לא צריכים, הם אבא כזה. אבא היה רק זה משהו.
Said along the way, I told a story that everyone who heard had thoughts of repentance, and it is as follows. Once was a king who had 6 sons and 1 daughter. This daughter was very precious in his eyes. He loved her exceptionally and took great delight in her. One time he spoke with her and lost his temper in the words, may the good no one take you. Flew from his mouth. In the evening she went to her room, and in the morning no one knew where she was, and her father was very distraught, and he went everywhere looking for her. The second that the king stood up, for he saw that the king was very troubled, and asked that he provide him with a servant, a horse, and money for the journey in order to search for her. He searched for a very long time until he found her. The following is the account of his search until he found her. He went from place to place for a very long time in deserts, fields, and forests, and he searched for her a very long time. As he was crossing a desert, he saw a path to the side and thought to himself, seeing that I've been going such a long time in the desert, and I cannot find her, I'll try this path, maybe I'll come to a settled area. And he went a very long time on that path. Afterward, he saw a castle with several soldiers standing guard around it. The castle was very attractive and well built, nach, nachman, and the soldiers were impressively aligned around it. He worried that the soldiers would not allow him to enter, but he said to himself, I will go and try. So he left the horse behind and approached the castle, and the soldiers did not hinder him. He went from room to room without disturbance and came to one reception hall in which the king sat wearing his crown, and there were a number of guards and musicians with their instruments standing before him. It was all very pleasant and beautiful, and neither the king nor any of the others inquired about him at all. And he saw there delicacies and fine foods, and he approached and ate and went to lie down in a corner to see what transpired there. He saw that the king ordered for the queen to be brought, that they went to bring her, and there ensued a great commotion and joy. The musicians played and sang a great deal. Being that they were bringing the queen, they placed a chair for her and sat her next to the king, and she was the above mentioned princess, and he, the second of the king, saw and recognized her. After that, the queen gazed about and saw a man lying in a corner and recognized him. She stood from her chair and went over to him, nudging him, and asked him, do you recognize me? He answered, yes, I do. You're the princess who was lost. And he asked her, how did you come to be here? She answered, and he asked, how did you come to be here? She answered, because my father blurted out the words, the no good one should take you, and here this place is no good. So he told her that her father was very saddened and that he had been searching for several years, and he asked, how can I get you out of here? She answered, the only possible way the way to take me out is if you choose a place and dwell there for a full year, and the whole year you must long to take me out. Anytime that you have free, you should only long and request and hope to free me. You should only long and request and hope to free me. You should only long and request and hope to free me, and do fast. And on the last day of the year you should fast and not sleep the entire day. So he went to do this. On the last day of the year he fasted and did not sleep, and rose and began the journey back. And on the way he saw a tree, and on it were growing very attractive apples. Rose began the journey back, and on the way he saw a tree, and on it were growing very attractive apples, and they were tantalizing to his eyes. And he approached and ate from them. Immediately after having eaten, he dropped and fell asleep, and he slept a very long time. His servant tried to wake him, but to no avail. Afterwards he woke from his sleep and asked the servant, where am I in the world? And the servant told him in the story, you were sleeping a very long time, several years, and I survived on the fruit. And he was very pained upon hearing this, so he returned there and found her, and she revealed her great distress to him. If you had only come on that day, you would have removed me from here, and because of one day you lost everything. Nevertheless, it is very difficult not to eat, especially on the last day when the evil inclination is very overpowering. That is to say, the princess told him that now she would make the conditions more lenient, that from now he would not be expected to fast. For that is a very hard condition to meet. So now choose a place again and dwell there also years before, and the last day you will be allowed to eat. Only you must not sleep, you must not drink wine, that you should not fall asleep, for the essential thing is not to sleep. So he went and did accordingly and did accordingly on the last day. He went there and did accordingly. On the last day he went there and saw a spring with the red appearance and the fragrance of wine. He asked the servant, "Did you see that spring? Oh, that ought to have water in it, but its color is red and its scent is of wine." And he went and tasted from the spring, and he immediately fell into a sleep. The last several years, 70 to be exact, and great numbers of soldiers passed with the equipment that accompanied them. The servant hid himself from the soldiers, and after that passed, carried a covered carriage, and in it sat the princess. She stopped by him, descended, and sat by him. Recognizing who he was, she shook him strongly, but he did not wake, and she started to bemoan how many immense efforts and travails he has undergone these many years in order to free me, and because of one day that he could have freed me and lost it, and because of one day he could have freed me and lost it. And she cried a great deal about this, saying, there is great pity on him and for me, that I am here so very long and cannot leave. After that she took her handkerchief from off of her head and wrote upon it with her tears and laid it by him, and she rose and boarded her carriage and rode away. Afterwards he woke and asked the servant, "Where am I in the world?" So he told him the whole story, that many soldiers had passed there, and that there had been a carriage, and a woman who wept upon him and cried out that there is great pity on him and on her. In the midst of this he looked around and saw that there was a handkerchief lying next to him. So he asked, "Where did this come from?" The servant explained that she had written upon it with her tears. So he took it and held it up against the sun and began to see the letters. And he read all that was written there, all her mourning, crying, and that she is no longer in the aforementioned castle, and that he should look for a mountain of gold and a castle of pearls. There he would find her. So he left the servant behind and went to look for her alone, and he went for several years searching, and thought to himself, certainly a mountain of gold and a castle of pearls would not be found in a settled area, for he was an expert in geography. So he went to the deserts, and he scouted and he searched for her there. Many years afterwards, he saw a giant man far beyond the normal human limits of size. He was carrying a massive tree, the size of which is not found in settled areas. The man asked him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I am a man." The giant was amazed and exclaimed, "I have been in the desert for such a long time, and I have never seen a man here." So he told him the whole story, and that he was searching for a mountain of gold and a castle of pearls. The giant answered him, "Certainly it does not exist at all." And he discouraged him and said that they had muddled his mind with nonsense, for it surely does not exist. And so he started to cry bitterly, for he felt certain that it must exist somewhere. And this giant discouraged him, saying that certainly he had been told nonsense. So he, the second of the kings, still said that it must exist. So the giant said to him, "I think it's nonsense. It is nonsense. But since I'm appointed over all the animals, I will do this for you. I will call them all, for they traverse the whole world. Perhaps one of them will know where's the mountain and the castle." And he called them all, from the smallest to the largest, all the varieties of animals, and asked them, and all the mats that they had not seen these things. So he said, "You see that they told you nonsense. If you want my advice, turn back, because you certainly will not find it, for it does not exist." And he pleaded passionately with him, saying, "But it absolutely must exist." So the giant said to him, "Behold, in the desert also lives my brother, and he is appointed over all the birds. Perhaps they know, since they fly at great heights. Perhaps they saw this mountain and castle. Go to him and tell him that I sent you to him." So he went for several years searching for him, and again he found a very large man as before. He was also carrying a massive tree as before, and the giant also asked him as had the first, and he told him the whole story, and that his brother had sent him to him. This giant also discouraged him, saying that it certainly did not exist, and he pleaded with him as with the first. That the giant said, then the giant said to him, "See, I am appointed over all the birds. I will call them. Perhaps they know." So he called all the birds and asked them all, from the smallest to the largest, and they answered that they did not know anything about this mountain and castle. So the giant said to him, "You see, it certainly does not exist. If you want my advice, turn back, for it simply does not exist." But he pleaded with him, saying, "It certainly exists." So the giant said to him, "Further ahead in the desert lives my brother, who is appointed over all the winds. And they run over the whole world, perhaps they know." So he went several more years searching, and found also this giant, and he was also carrying a giant tree. And the giant asked him, as the others had, and he told him the whole story as before. And the giant discouraged him as before, and he pleaded with him as well. So the third giant said to him, and he pleaded with him as well. So the third giant said to him that for his sake he would call all the winds and ask them. He called them, and all the winds came, and he asked them all, and not one of them knew about the mountain and the castle. So the giant said to him, you see, they told you nonsense. And the second to the king began to cry bitterly and said, I know that it exists. As they were speaking, one more wind came, and the one appointed over them was annoyed with him, saying, why did you not come with the rest? And he answered, I was delayed, for I needed to carry princess. With the rest, I decreed over all to come. He answered, I was delayed, for I needed to carry a princess to a mountain of gold and a castle of pearls. And the second of the king was overjoyed, and the second of the king was overjoyed. The one appointed asked the wind, what is expensive there? That is to say, what things are considered valuable and important there? He answered him, everything there is very expensive. So the one appointed over the winds said to the second of the king, seeing that you have been searching for such a long time, and you went through many difficulties, perhaps now you will be hindered by expenses, or therefore I am giving you this vessel. Every time you reach into it, you will receive money from it. And he commanded the previous wind to take him there. The wind came storming and brought him there, right to the gate. There were guards posted there that would not let him in, that would not let him enter the city. So he reached into the vessel, took out money, and bribed him, and entered the city. And it was a beautiful city. He approached a man and rented lodgings, for he would need to stay there for some time. For it would need much intelligence, wisdom to free her, and how he freed her he did not tell, but in the end he freed her. Nachman from umaaiiinnn.